Okay, got a couple projects today. First of all, going to be remaking these table legs out of hardwood. This is just an MDF prototype that I made, and I got to make it out of something more solid. That's for a table. I'll show you later. And then I want to take these. This is all my camping stuff, and I just wanted to reorganize it in a way that's not so messy. So I'm going to reorganize these two Tupperware bins, and then I'm going to take all of these are all my microscope tools and sort of accoutrement, and I'm going to make some magnetic tool holders for it and I'm going to make some magnetic tool holders for it and some other stuff just to make it more easily accessible when I'm doing my lab thing. So yeah. Alright, so I'm just ripping up a few. I think I used poplar for this. These are going to be the legs of that table, and I'm just gluing them together using standard pipe clamps, making sure I got clamps on both sides for even pressure so it doesn't bow. And then this is all my camping gear. I just hate everything being in one big container, so I'm sort of splitting everything up and measuring, how I could divide things up so I could have a separate little storage compartment for each piece. And so I just ripped everything at one height to be just under, just fit under the lid. And here it probably wasn't necessary, but the sides of the containers are a little bit angled, so I was trying to figure out the right angle to have it meet up with it. I didn't want to nail these in, so it was just going to be a little box that's going to sit inside of it. Splitting it into three, a box in the middle, and then there's, space on either side of it, and you can kind of fold it either way, slide it either way to adjust it really. But then I decided to put a couple of flaps. I put it on both sides because if you just have it on one side, it doesn't have anything to keep it in place, so that's why I did two of them, even though I didn't really need one on the other side. I just didn't want to glue it in place or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know, this just makes me really, makes me kind of happy to have things organized, and it really helps me to have physical dividers because I'm lazy and disorganized. So this really helped a lot. Okay, so there's one down. As you can see, a little more organized. Everything's kind of where it needs to be. I can always add stuff later if I got more stuff, but that kind of does it for now, and at least keeps everything. And it at least keeps everything from all being in one giant drawer. Just makes things a little more convenient and less annoying. So there's one. So now I'm going to be making a little bit of storage for all my microscope tools. Just some stuff so I can keep it in reach and easy access instead of being cluttered on a shelf. For all of the metal utensils, I'm going to use some magnets. I'm just going to use a 2x4 to keep it simple. Gonna put some magnets in there and then just some holes so my syringes and flashlights have somewhere to go. Okay, so I already cut my 2x4 to size. I'm just kind of laying everything out. Here's a little trick if you don't have, I needed 16th inch flat aluminum bar and I didn't have any, so I cut one side of angle aluminum off. And then if you just use one of these adjustable wrenches, which the name escapes me for some reason, you can use it like a little mini press brake, and make a little bracket to put things on, this one being for my flashlights. Switching out the blade, and I'm just making some little channels for the magnets to fit in, just hot gluing them in. I actually should have used something other than hot glue because one of them popped out already. So I cut a little bit off just so everything would be easier to reach. Instead of having to reach just at the very bottom, it's sort of in the middle where you would want to be picking it up rather than you know, if the 2x4 went to here, you know, you'd be picking up everything at the end of it. Just a thought. So now I'm going to use a Forstner bit, and I'm just going to make some through holes to put my syringes in, just so they've got a perfect little slot. I hate things being on a shelf. I'm really messy, and so having a sort of perfect holster for everything really helps me out, helps me keep things clean. So here's what it'll look like all finished. All finished up. All my standard tools just hanging off, ready to be picked up magnetically, so they're not sitting on any surfaces. Syringes, a little light mount, and then just normal flashlights. A bunch of stuff I regularly use, and then all of it is going to go on a pre-existing cabinet. It's just going to go underneath, and I'll just drill it from somewhere. So here's what my microscope cabinet looked like all together. Got some spot for my tools, specimens, microscopes, everything I normally use. So now my glue up is all dried. I scrape it off, run it through the planer a few times, get each side flat, straight edge the sides, and then I realized as I used my prototype leg that I didn't make my glue up wide enough. So here I'm trying to see if I can't finagle things and still make it look the way I want. So here I'm just gluing up. I realized that I didn't have enough space, so I'm just adding another inch or so just to get my legs as wide as they want. Okay, while I'm waiting for that glue to dry, I've got this pretty ancient looking level that I'm going to restore. And while it looks like, I mean, almost complete trash, I restored a little bit of it, and it turns out to be a really cool, you can see the difference there. It's actually a really pretty, although cheap level, but it's a real quick, I mean, it basically just needs to be sanded and oiled. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm just using an orbital sander. I think I used 120 sandpaper. This is a project. I'm not gaining anything from this. I just think it would look cool. If I cared more, I might sand up to 150 or 180. But it looked pretty good at 120. Just gets rid of all the oxidation and gunk and finger grease. I tried some sanding sponges, but I find for all these little inside radiuses, cloth-backed sandpaper worked the best. I think cloth-backed sandpaper works best for almost everything. Just adding a little bit of mineral oil here that I normally use for like a cutting board. I could have lacquered it, but it's so easy to just, it turned out pretty cool, to just wipe on, wipe off. No weird chemicals, doesn't smell bad. And then I get back to my table legs, run it through the planer again to flatten everything out. I'm trying to pattern it out so I can use as little as wood as possible and get the legs to the size I want. And to do a little bit of finagling to get it, and then just sort of freehanding. Bust out my compound miter saw, set it to 30 and 30. Get to cutting. I kind of fumbled around a little bit trying to copy the ones that I'd already done. It was kind of hard to find a good reference point since they weren't exactly perfect. Kind of sanding up all those long edges that I freehanded on the table saw. Trying to figure out how I really want these legs to connect. I'm sort of lazy, so I was just trying to figure out a way to use fasteners, but to keep them hidden. So I ended up just counterboring them a little bit, and came back a little bit later and filled them all in with wooden dowels. So now that I kind of figured out how I want them to go together, I'm just running over them with a real wide radius router bit. You'll kind of see once I get the whole thing finished. And so I was having a little bit of trouble keeping these flat. Ended up kind of flubbing a little bit of them. You just sand them later, and I don't know, it just takes a little more effort when you're sanding them. So same thing with these. I'm just using an orbital with like 120. Just trying to get all the marks from the sander out, all the burn marks, and then any possible dips and dives from the router. So I've got the legs together, and I just need to figure out a good way to connect the legs to the actual table base. I decided on sort of a, I don't know, a rounded triangle. Just cut it out with a jigsaw, cut the edges on the edge sander, sanded it, gave it a little round over, made sure that it was centered, and then I marked it and countersunk it so I could screw it onto the legs and then screw through it to get to the table base. That way there wouldn't be any screws showing on top of the table, and I'd still have a good solid connection that could be removed later if I had to. It took me a little bit of time to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't have quite the right dowels, so I just kind of, it was a little bit sloppy, but I just super glued dowels in at a little bit of an angle, chopped them short, and then used a little bit of glue and wood filler to fill in the rest of the gaps. Put in some holes for the actual top to be mounted through. Oh, I guess this is me filling and sanding all the things. I just wanted the paint to look good. Didn't want any gaps or anything like that. I just wanted it to be a nice smooth finish. So those legs ain't coming apart. I guess I could dig out the screws, but whatever. Put on a little bit of wood filler, fill in small gaps that are left over. Setting everything up to paint. I just used a Rust-Oleum black satin enamel, and I hated it. I usually use lacquer-based paint, and this stuff dried really slow. It was really sticky. It went on nicely. I mean, you can see it's nice, shiny. It's a good coat, but it was pretty sticky. Didn't sand very well, so I'd recommend a lacquer-based paint. That's just what I'm used to using. But here I am just assembling it. Here's my schmancy tabletop that the Subaru guys down the street gave me like 3 years ago. And so it felt good to finally have this project finished, even though the table's too short. I don't know if it'd be a good card table for people sitting on the floor, Japanese style. Anyways, this is a finished table. If you want to buy it, you can just have it, I guess. I don't care. No, I'll probably sell it or give it to my mom or something. Today's Mother's Day. Oh, shit. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I hope you learned some stuff. Bye. Gracias. That means thank you. If you want to see a microscope video, click there. If you want to see a how-to, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there. If you want to see you get rickrolled, click there. Okay.